And this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. In today's episode, we are talking about intuition. Is there a connection between intuition and authenticity? Can fine-tuning your intuition lead you to more authenticity? Carrie Ann Moss said, "When we are disconnected from our intuition, we tend to make choices that are in conflict with our truest nature." Do you agree? Are you a skeptic? Do you trust your intuition when faced with important decisions? What is intuition anyway? Is it a special superpower that only few possess? Are highly sensitive people more intuitive? How about children? Men versus women? I am speaking with my dear friend, Julie Kazmariou. Julie is a certified life coach, certified mentor coach, intuitive consultant, and podcast host. Julie assists leaders, artists, parents, and visionaries use their voice to create positive change, gain clarity, and lead with meaning and purpose. Julie in Conversation, Julie's podcast, is a live weekly podcast dedicated to amplifying diverse voices and inspiring personal and collective change. Julie's experience since 2009 includes the production of 4 podcast series, video interviews, and hundreds of hours of intimate conversations with best-selling authors, psychologists, experts in the field of child development, women's emotional and spiritual health, and well-being. Julie facilitates sought-after workshops and dance events to empower women to connect to their intuition and use their voice for good. She lives in Montreal, and she's the mother of 2 boys, ages 8 and 5. In this episode, I also share a cringe-worthy confession, and towards the end, Julie does an impromptu intuitive reading for me. You don't want to miss. And now, please enjoy this conversation about intuition and authenticity with Julie Kazmariou. Julie, welcome to Authentic Parenting.
Thank you, Anna Seawald. I'm so happy to be a guest on your amazing podcast.
Thank you. I've been a guest on your show. It was very lovely. Julie in Conversation. Mm-hmm. If anybody wants to go check out my interview, you don't have to listen to mine, but you have amazing guests and you cover lots of interesting, deep topics. And it's live. That's the amazing part of your show, right?
Yeah, it's fun, live.
Yes.
And I do suggest people listen to the conversation with you, although there's lots of you on your podcast, but it was a special one.
Yes. So Julie, tell me, as I follow you and I see your posts and know you as a friend now, this concept of intuition. Were you an intuitive kid growing up? When did you discover that you have special powers, perhaps? Let's call it special powers. When did you become interested in exploring intuition for yourself and in general?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to take a moment to say, I can't believe I'm in the hot seat now, the special hot seat, because I always love your questions and where they come from and what they inspire as answers from your guests. So now it's my turn and I'm excited that I'm here doing this. So thank you for that. I think, there's a relationship for me between intuition and sensitivity and perception of subtleties in the environment and from within. And I think I've always been that way as a child. And though I might not have labeled it intuition or sensitivity, or at times, and I'm sure people can relate to this, maybe there's been labels of being too sensitive. And so I was one of those kids who was told, you're too sensitive. And I think I just was never conscious of it necessarily. But as I grew into it and noticed that I had certain interests, like growing older into my late adolescence, early adulthood, developing interests in the world beyond what I could see that maybe wasn't spoken in scientific circles or amongst the crowd that was pursuing more linear pursuits or activities. I was being drawn to like astrology and energy anatomy and energy healing, and discovering that I had a deep passion for what I couldn't see but felt. And so I think it started, I think it's always been within me, and it's always within everyone. I just want to say, like, it is a superpower, but we all have it. I say that intuition, it's not a gift that we have. Intuition is beautiful, and it's the nature of being human. Some people call it, we have 5 senses. Some people call it the 6th sense. There's many ways of relating to it. The gift of intuition is what it's telling us. And if we can listen to it and act from it and learn from it and have the courage to trust it, and that's where the gift lies. And I think that's something that we hone and that we practice and that I've been committed to. And, there's a trajectory of how I got into it professionally and helping people with it. But I think it first started with me just claiming and owning the fact that I had a deep interest in what I couldn't see, but what I could feel, and then taking courses and practices and certifications and finding teachers that can help me trust this and understand it and work with it.
So basically everybody has intuition, correct?
Right. I mean, don't you agree?
Growing up, I have to say, I thought only certain people had intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was explained or talked about around me like that certain people are more intuitive. And my mom, for example, was very intuitive, and she almost possessed, I guess, psychic abilities.
Wow.
I mean, I don't want to go into that, but growing up with that kind of a mother, I always thought that it's certain people who possess those kind of skills. And then as I was growing up, I was discovering that, again, I'm a sensitive person too. I've been told many times, oh, you're so overly sensitive and overly emotional. And like yourself, we perceive the world differently. I mean, only now I can say that I'm a highly sensitive person without any shame, even with some pride, But I was always made feel like I'm less than, there's something wrong with me. Why am I crying? Why am I so emotional? Why do I relate to other people? And there was a period in my life after the earthquake that I really got interested in the same things as you. And I started thinking maybe women are more intuitive than men. Is that true?
I'm not. There's an amazing author, and her name is Dr. Mona Lisa Schultz. She's a I have her book right here. It's called Awakening Intuition. She's, I just want to she's a neuropsychiatrist and a neuroscientist, and she's worked as a medical intuitive, and she talks about the female brain, and she would be the source for talking about that. In terms of gender is different than what you're assigned at birth biologically. I think from my experience, I could talk about the fact that I think both men and women are intuitive. My husband's extremely intuitive. And I think it's just the way that you connect to also, like, he has a heightened sense. He's a highly sensitive person. So that naturally also makes him have a keen sense of intuition. And I think everybody's intuition shows up differently. We each have our own unique language. Like you were saying, Anna, your mother, you even use the word psychic. And we also have there's a consciousness around what does the word psychic mean, and should we not talk about it? And, the etymology of psychic means of the soul. And obviously, your mother, and obviously in you have this ability to know and see and feel differently, right, than other people, or in a heightened sense of it. And I could say that for my mother as well. And there's a lineage of it in it. And it has taken time. And it does take time to just be aware of it and then feel comfortable in it and then see it as a gift and something to use. and to benefit yourself and others. So in terms of the question, men, women, I mean, in my experience, it's present in both. Now, is one more the other? I mean, I don't think I'm the best person to answer that because I don't distinguish between the two, but I think that it would be fair to give everyone the chance of having that, of knowing that we all have this innate, like just we're wired to feel and to sense, just like anybody has. There's some people who just naturally have a musical ability. We can just relate it to like playing the piano. A child or somebody might go to the piano and just naturally have a sense of playing music, but they will still practice and learn how to read music and become really good and could be this protege. Whereas another child, they'll go to the piano and they might not be as naturally talented or have a penchant towards playing it. So I think you can just look at it as that. It's a certain gift or a proclivity towards something that you have a natural ability for and that can be heightened. And that's how I perceived it. I was naturally drawn to it. I was told by others that there was accuracy in what I was perceiving. And I loved just the communication that I was able to have and the healing component that was brought forward when I was in that space of intuition, when I was talking about it, when I was and still am inviting people to connect to their own inner wisdom, to find their own best answers. And it's just something I'm very comfortable with.
So by becoming more intuitive, is it fair to say that we are getting closer to our true authentic self?
I think so.
Yeah. How can someone know if they have intuition? How can you test that? Let's say somebody who doesn't believe, right? Or doesn't give so much thought.
There's a spectrum of I had a guest on my podcast. Her name's Helene Wabe. She's the principal scientific investigator, researcher at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is an amazing nonprofit organization that exists to bridge science and spirituality. It was founded by Edgar Mitchell, who was the 6th person on the moon to visit the moon as an astronaut and to land on the moon. And so she grew up, I'm not going to tell her whole story, but she grew up in an environment that was comfortable talking about the world beyond what we could see. So the psychic realms of mediumship, realms of intuition. And so she's now investigating it scientifically because it's something that as a researcher and a scientist, she wants to be able to bring to a different sphere. So there's a whole spectrum. There's like gut instinct. So that's like almost survival instinct. And we all have that. It's like, do I cross the street now? Like there's something that's running through us. Mm-hmm. And then there's like on the complete other spectrum is like trans channel. So there's like a whole wave of like, and a trans channel is like, there's people who, and you can choose to believe this or not, I'm just presenting what's out there, where people they start channeling other dimensions, other beings from other realms or other dimensions.
Yeah, that's a little too much for me, I have to say. Then I'm not there yet. But when I was a kid, can I share something silly?
Yeah.
I guess I was interested in this stuff as a kid too. Now that you're talking about this, maybe I was my daughter's age, like 10, 11, 13, definitely around that age. I'm not sure how we got into this as a neighborhood kids. And I would love to hear if any of my listeners has some kind of experience like this, or maybe you have done this, Julie. Mm-hmm. We would get together, a group of kids. Of course, there are no parents. We would put this white, big, large paper and write the alphabet in a semicircle way on that white paper, put it on the table. We would sit and we would, dim the lights. We would have candles. And usually I was the medium.
Wow.
So listen.
No surprise there. Yes.
I know I had satanic.
No, the host and the intuitive,
I know. So I'm sharing this for the first time. I don't think I've even shared with, close friends, but hey, this is,
we're all close friends now.
I know. Yeah. This is my podcast. So I would sit in the middle and we had this little espresso cup saucer, that little plate that you put under. So that would be upside down on the paper
Yeah.
with an arrow drawn with ashes from the candlelight. So basically, we would sit there as a group quietly and say this script, some kind of words. I don't know where we learned that. Now it's questionable. It would start like, I am Anna, I am the medium, I am calling all the dead people and the souls and stuff like that.
Wow.
I'm translating this from Armenian. So I would sit there and wait. And 3 people, selected people, we would have our index finger on the little saucer, the little plate, and we would wait. And the plate would start moving and go to one letter to the other and spell a word.
Wow.
Let's say we would say, Julie have a boyfriend? And if yes, what's his name? And so we would wait. And the letter VICTOR, let's say, that spelled the word. We would say, oh my gosh, Julie, your boyfriend's name is Victor. And so this would go on every evening for days on.
Wow.
And amazing things happened. Sometimes he would say, hey, spirit, if you're here, make a noise. And I swear, once the guitar in the room, somebody strummed the guitar and no one was near the guitar.
Wow.
And we would freak ourselves out. So I have so many stories of this.
Wow.
From my childhood.
My childhood was the Ouija board. Did you hear of that? I don't know if it was like a North American thing, but it's similar. Like we dim the lights, we gather around and we like wait to see if whatever will happen will rise, will move. Like, is there anybody else out there besides us? But wow, thank you for sharing that. That's pretty, wow. Well, how do you feel now that you've shared that? Like, I'm just curious because, it's a big experience. And it's also something sometimes we like dampen or suppress our memories because it's like, little girls, what are they doing? But actually they have wisdom,
I don't know. I mean, I don't believe there was anything to it, but I guess as children, we were drawn to this paranormal side of things. We were interested maybe that there is something bigger than us. I'm not sure. So are children then more intuitive and more open sort of as vessels? And as we get into adulthood, do you think it dampens? And yeah?
Yes. I mean, I see it with my children. I know there's a lot of parents talking about how their kids there's less conditioning, they're much more, they're definitely much more open. Their hearts are open. They're less susceptible to cultural conditioning and the way in which the world works and imposes its structured consciousness onto them. So I think it's when as a parent, my boys are 8 and 5, and I don't necessarily talk about the paranormal with them, but what I do talk about is just, for me, it's like a grounded messaging, which is what is most important. So whether people are believing in, the stories that we just shared, which are they true? Are they not? Is it just, make believe or whatever it is? But what's not make believe is just having access to your own internal navigation system and your own internal wisdom and being grounded in your body and making sense of that. And so with my kids, I'm always just imparting. It's like, how do you feel inside? What's true for you? And that doesn't have to be like a talk about paranormal or like that you can't, are you fabricating this? It's just like there's the linear mind and the non-linear mind. And they both have important and crucial components in our life, but often there's tremendous wisdom that we're neglecting, not listening to. And kids have access to that. Like they know, and so I like to hear from them what they think and what they know, and giving them the legitimacy that they have within them already and letting them, trust that first.
Yes, that's great. So tell me, how do you use your intuition on a daily basis in regards with parenting or life? And you said your husband is intuitive. That could be interesting.
I mean, it's interesting because it's like, yes, I'm intuitive, but it's a practice. It doesn't mean like everything's always working out and perfect. Like intuition, one of the women that I've learned from, her name's Dr. Judith Orloff. She's a board certified psychiatrist. She's also another term called medical intuitive. So it's people who can tap into the physical body and the emotional and the emotional body and the energy body and sense what's going on. But she's a scientist, right? She's a doctor. And so I've learned from her, and she says your intuition takes you to an opportunity or a lesson. So when I'm trusting my intuition, doesn't always mean there's like a big bowl of chocolates and it's like I'm jumping into it. It means, okay, I'm glad I trusted it, but I see here that I'm growing and there's room for development in this area. And I'm so glad that I took that decision because I see that I needed it. So it always feels right and true, but it doesn't necessarily feel easy. It's like often our intuition will say, I think it's getting some nudges, some gentle, quiet nudges that this relationship is not feeling good anymore. So let me just trust that and see where it takes. And if I keep following that, and eventually I'll get clear on, okay, I think now's the time for me to leave, or now's the time for me to get support with this relationship. It's moment to moment is what I like to say. It's like moment to moment. When I was choosing the schools for my 8-year-old, when I had to choose which school he was going to go to elementary school, like it's a big decision. I think we can relate to that. I mean, sometimes it's the local school and that's decision is made, but we had a few options, and I felt like it was like, I had strife over it, and it's, yes, I have intuition and I know it feels good, but sometimes it's like it takes me steps to lead up to the moment where there's clarity. It doesn't necessarily present itself always directly in the moment that I want it to.
Have you ever had that kind of magical, quote unquote, magical, intuitive experience where you can like share that story, perhaps like either it's a decision or something you were led to, or you totally trusted your instincts and wow, such and such happened?
I mean, there's lots of experiences. I mean, it's, I like to keep it practical and like everyday magic kind of like, because I think that's where we can go wrong. It's like, I trusted my intuition and I won the lottery. It's more like I could just give a very practical experience that I just recently had. It's the summer and I have 2 boys and they don't necessarily like to be in camp. And it was just interesting, like navigating summer. I know I've been learning that there's no school and what do we do? And I also am self-employed. So how do I navigate like having time for myself and my business and also being with my boys, and how do I figure that out? And it's tiring. I found it tiring, and, I want to enjoy summer and it's so great. And yet it's just something to navigate. So school started and I'm so happy, right? Do you relate to that, Anna? Obviously.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean,
okay.
There's a lot of stress that comes when you go to school. There's a little, yes and no.
Okay. Well, I get it. And I know everybody has their own experience. From my experience, my kids, one of them was starting kindergarten and the other one really likes school. Structure is good for him. He likes his friends there. So I could not wait for school because he was happy there. And so I was so happy that school started. I'm getting to the point of the story where my intuition kicks in. There's a retreat center that has sort of been my salvation that I've gone to on my own. It's a 5-hour drive from Montreal. I'm in Montreal. And throughout my experience, even before kids, but with kids, it was like, that's where I would like go away for a weekend, take the risk of leaving the nest and like reclaiming some of those pieces that I had disconnected from, or just needing to sleep or needing to stop, wean from breastfeeding, like whatever it is. This place has been sort of my nourishing place of like remembering who I am as an individual, not only as a mother. And as the summer was ending, I was looking at this retreat center thinking, is there anything there that I should do? And there's usually a presenter and a workshop, but it's also a healing space. And so there was a couple of weekends that I was looking at. I was like, maybe this is too much. Like, I don't know if I want to have like present it's a financial outlay. And do I feel comfortable driving there? And it's right when school starts. And so I kept it was on my radar. And the woman's face whose retreat I wanted to go to, her name is Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams. She's talking about radical dharma and the racialization of America and something I'm really interested in. And so I kept it was just kept nudging at me, and I didn't book it. And then as school was approaching, I would keep the website open on my screen, and I kept looking at the date. And there's more to the story in terms of it being more of a stretch because my husband was going to be away at the same time. And I was like, that really felt like a risk. Like, who is going to take care of my kids? And that felt like an extra stretch. Like, I've never done that, like relied on a babysitter or had them sleep over at family members when we were both not here. And we also have a dog. There's just things to navigate, right? And like, but I really feel like I need this, and can I do it? And it feels really important. But what about all these other moving parts? And I'm like, I'm going to do it. Like, it kept calling me. I would sleep on it and it was still present. And so I went to the website. I'm like, I'm doing it. I spoke to a couple of people about it that I trust. And it just felt like whatever they had responded with, it was like, for me, yes, this feels good. This feels good. I kept feeling into it. And then I booked it, and it felt really good, and that's part of the intuitive piece too, is like when you make a decision, there's usually a sense of peace or expansion, or depending how it registers in your body, you feel a sense of like relaxation or calm, or that feels right. And I booked it, and other things happened, and my husband ended up having to cancel his trip. So he ended up being here that weekend. So I felt even better going, and I went, and I just came back on Sunday night. Everything was everything felt aligned. And it doesn't always mean that everything's going to be aligned, but I'm so glad I trusted my decision. I felt into it, and it was a beautiful experience for me, and it felt right. It just felt like a real gift for my soul and for myself. And to me, that's me trusting myself. And the gentle nudge, it's a very gentle nudge. We could miss it if we're not listening. So that's just what came up.
Yes. Yeah. So usually there are signs, right? When something is quote unquote meant to happen. Do you pay attention to those signs, or do you think, are the signs there, or just because we are preoccupied with the idea, sort of we start to see the signs? Are the
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Which one is first? I always want to know.
Well, I think you need to ask yourself, like, what's happening here? I think for me, it's always important to be grounded in yourself, in your body, like connect within. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we start creating stories about the signs. Like, I saw that, and this means that, and this means, like we could create a whole story, right?
Yes.
Like, I don't know if that's real or not. I don't know. I think you have to ask yourself. I think it's very specific and individual. Like, I'm happy to speak about a specific question. And, I think we can get validation, or like, oh, so I booked this retreat. And then if everybody started talking about it around me, like, oh, I'm going here, I'm going there. Like, would that then mean I validated that validates what I trusted? It could be, or it could just be like, I know that's me, like that belongs to me and what feels true for me. Because you can also think like, I started thinking about, something bad that can happen, and then it started showing up around me. And does that mean it's going to happen to me? That's another process of the mind, the mental.
So then both positive and negative things can happen, right? If you start thinking, let's say I'm thinking about peaches, right? Mm-hmm. Peach pie, peach gazpacho, peach dessert. Yeah. And all of a sudden I receive a book in the mail. It's about making desserts from peach. Then a friend invites me all of a sudden to this restaurant, and they're celebrating peach season. Oh my gosh, everything is happening. That's what I'm talking about. Are there things that are happening outside of us?
I think so. Yes. I think we're inextricably linked to many things that we can't see, and to people, and we're all connected. I think it's just how you interpret it and how you make sense of it that really matters. Because for some people that may be like, that's so cool. I feel so validated. I'm not alone in this universe. I'm connected. I'm tuning in. I'm tuning into myself. I'm tuning into maybe where I'm being pulled, and what I'm wanting to do, and what I'm good at, and what I need to do, and how I can impact the world. And, when you tune into yourself and respond to like what feels good and what you're good at, and what feels like integrous to you, then you impact everyone around you in that way. And it could be a very small way. It could be just when you're dropping off your kid and having that interaction with the teacher or the fellow parents, or it could be when you're speaking on a stage in front of however many people you're interacting with. For me, it's like being in integrity with yourself. And intuition means like being this heart and mind coherence, on a very practical level. And it takes work to listen, and it takes work to silence the chatter, and it takes work to be really in your body, feeling and sensing and knowing, because there's fear, there's wishful thinking, there's anxiety, there's all kinds of emotions that keep us from accurately discerning, what's true and what's for me and what do I need. And am I answering any of your questions, Anna?
Yes. Different things are coming up for me. So basically we can use the power of the mind and desire or focus on positive things, because if you focus on the negative things, that can happen too, right? You can start seeing it. If you say, oh, I see suicide, children's suicides are happening so much. And now all of a sudden on your Facebook feed, it pops up, you read an article. Are you seeking it, or it was there before and you were not paying attention and now you're more focused? I don't know. Is this relate to intuition? And if so, then can we just diverge from that and only see positive things and create positive experiences for ourselves? Or can we be choosy, right? Can we have a say in that? Or if something negative happens in our life, it's usually a cycle. You lose your keys, then you lock yourself out of your car, then, you lose your wallet, right? It's like a cycle of negative things happen. Can you stop in that moment and course correct in a positive way? Or no, once you're on that negative wavelength, you have to ride that wave?
There's so much coming up right now, and how I want to respond to that. Like the coach in me wants to say, well, I think you are, I feel like you know the answer to that, No?
No,
maybe you don't.
No,
I don't even know the answer to that. I think there's so much in that question that I think it's also like, well, let's say you're talking about the suicide, like I see it here, I see it there. And like, of course, we have no privacy on the web, right? So if I'm looking at something, it's going to show up on my Instagram and Facebook because they've cookies and all this, I don't know, other stuff. They know exactly where I'm looking. So it is going to pop up. Like that's intentional from those people who are governing the world of like Google and, but my point is, well, you could look at it a couple of ways. One is it's on my mind. How do I want to respond? Like, is there something here that I need to investigate or look at, or does it bring up fear in me? Does it bring up worry? Is it something I want to help? Is it, so you could, I think it's how you respond to it that matters in a practical sense. You asked if it's connected to intuition. I mean, the practical response to that would be like, again, like, how does it feel for me? Because I feel that happens to me too. It's like, here it is again, and here it is again, here it is again. Why does that keep happening? Is this a message for me? I think just lately, right now, in my current reality, I feel like I have choice here, and I don't necessarily want to be seeing that, so I'm just going to change the channel, and I'm going to choose to focus on something else, or use that to know that, I'm okay, or that that's not what I want to be seeing right now.
So do you meditate daily? How do you deepen your practice of grounding yourself, tuning into your body? Do you do this daily?
I think it's a way of life, like this whole intuitive stuff, it's like, it's not like, for me, it's a way of being, it's really, we could talk the esoteric talk, but I think for, as a human being with high sensitivity and a nervous system that needs to be regulated, and somebody who's I'm very physical. I need to move. I need to exercise, to go for a run. I used to be, a gymnast, so I'm very athletic. I need to move my energy. So for me, being in my body and grounding is extremely important. And I think, we live in a society where we're often in our mind or in our heads. And a lot of the anxiety is because we're not in our bodies, connected to what we're feeling. And that's been my journey, is like, because I had a lot of anxiety, is like, how do I get into my body? How do I allow myself to feel? What am I feeling? how do I move it through? What's in my body? What's traumas there? What pain is there? It's like I've had, and I continue to have support and therapists and people that I call on to support me in my own navigating of like what's going on in my physiology. So it's a daily practice. It's like, as a highly sensitive person, I know it's like there's constant things being brought to my attention or not feeling good, or so what is that? And trying to work with it. And, it's just my nature is like, I'm curious about myself and others. And I'm interested in wellness and feeling well. And that's like a full-time job. I mean, also in having kids, and like, it's very loud and there's lots of noise and lots of feelings. So it's like, wow, there's a lot. And so for me, it's like, I move, I dance, I do breathe, I do, like when I was at this retreat, I was being drawn to just sit and meditate. I'm not drawn to that when I'm at home because I can't hear myself, it's like, it's hard. So I go into nature. There's different ways of grounding and being in your body for everyone. And I think it's like for people listening, for you, I'm sure you have your way of connect. I know I see you on your Instagram stories going into nature. Like we all have our way of really like just being able to tune everything out and connect. And I do guided meditations and visualizations. Sometimes on my podcast, I bring people into just really the experience of feeling themselves. So whenever I can have that experience of feeling myself and where I'm at, then that feels like a gift.
I can say a few things. Yes, I do go into the nature every day. And when I walk and, talk to trees and birdies and stuff like that, I'm usually alone. There's nobody on that path when I'm there. Usually when you let your mind wander and not think about your projects, like something new idea comes up. The other day I'm like, some idea came. I'm like, okay, I got to go home and do that. And I come home, sit down, boom, 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 create that graphic or that flyer, create a mommy group for my neighborhood, new moms, do this, like some idea. It could be random, it could be big, but I usually trust and act upon it. That's
there you go.
Like, I can see that's intuition, sort of like when I'm quiet, something surfaces, or I had an idea for a t-shirt, like more some creative idea usually. It is, or the other day I was walking, I was in the city walking, and I'm like, I want to rearrange my office. I want to get the hanging plant near the window and blah, blah, blah. And so I had that idea for a while, right? But I didn't buy a plant. And yesterday I was coming from a different part of the town into my office. I see there is a little mini farmer's market, and I'm like, I don't need to buy any food. I'm like, just check in. I don't want to go. And so I go in and I see it's not food, it's plants.
Nice.
And I see exactly the plant that I wanted to buy, the spider plant. And I had $20 in my wallet, and I purchased, it was $15 this plant. And I'm like, you know what? This was interesting. I was looking for this plant. I should buy this plant.
Wow.
And so is that intuition?
Yes.
Is this, yes?
I mean, don't you think it is? Like it's flow. It's like there's no tension, there's no resistance. You're just in the flow, and you found the plant.
But it's such a simple, silly thing, right?
Well, I don't think it's silly. I think it's a moment. There are moments there. It's like being in the flow. To me, those are like grace inspired, or whatever word you want to use. Like, it sounds very trivial, but those are moments that our days are made of that make it enriching, I find, because now when you look at that plant, look how it's hanging in your room, now it's in your office. Because I think we wait for something great, big, huge to fall on our head, and to like show us the light, Yes. I think that's rare. I think it's those moments. It's being in the flow. It's feeling like it's not always flowing, but then when it is flowing, it's like, okay, I know this feels right, and having gratitude for that. And
Do you think by having those small flow moments and practicing intuition like that, trusting and being grateful for those small moments, we can sort of get ready for those big moments as well? Like we're fine-tuning and sharpening that sense. Is that true?
Yeah, I think it's like a muscle. It's trust and practice. And I think so the other night, we had a fire in our house. It was on the balcony and it was in the middle of the night and I woke up. Now there's what I haven't talked about this on my podcast, and it happened not that long ago, a few weeks ago. And I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and I heard something, and I had a particularly like aggravating evening with my kids and me and my husband, and we were all just very emotional, and I was feeling very angry, and I went to bed. Like it was just something that it was just being aware of those moments that happen in parenting and families. I could speak for myself. So I went to sleep and I was like, I just figured I'm going to have like this really deep sleep. And I woke up at 2:30 in the morning to this sound of like, I didn't know what it was. And I thought, we have a dog. So I thought it was her like in the kitchen looking for something, and she was sleeping right next to me. And then I just continued following the noise. I thought it was my kids. Like, is it sleepwalking? Is somebody in the house? And then I saw there were like these huge flames, and it was crackling that I heard through, like, the doors were closed, thankfully, because everything was contained. Everybody was fine. And we obviously had to get out, and I called 911, but I woke up. Now, I don't know what that is. I can interpret it. I know that it's like there's the mother bear wisdom. It's like you're always sleeping like with one ear open, like listening, waiting, available for whoever needs you in the middle of the night. I'm just grateful I woke up and we were fine, so I think there's like, when you're aware, and some people don't wake up from when there's fire starts, and I was lucky. We were lucky. I mean, whatever it was, I don't know. I'm still making sense of it, but I'm just grateful that I was able to hear that. And I don't even know why I'm talking about this, but I'm sharing it because there are many people who have stories like, I didn't get on that plane, or I didn't cross the street, or I did cross the street, so it's not to discredit, like, your experiences are your own. And some people do have those great big experiences where they felt like, don't do that, or go do that because you're going to get into that and you're going to want it and it's going to be great. So it's just like inviting people to their own experiences, and that, like just trusting who you are and what you're made of and how you're being communicated to from within. And even if you're wanting to have that open level of communication beyond like your physical body, I think we have the capacity also to have possibilities beyond like our linear mind. And I think it could be exciting too, because we don't have all the answers to everything, Look at the state of our world, it needs help.
So what's an intuitive reading? I know you do offer that as a service, and I see some other people on Instagram or on social media. It comes up a lot. What's an intuitive reading? What does it entail?
An intuitive reading with me, because it's very different depending on everybody has their own signature and way of connecting with people. But for me, it's this space of gentle transformation and healing, so that you feel witnessed and seen and reminded of your gifts, your strengths, your talents, and helping you remove any obstacles that you might not be seeing, or any blind spots that you're not privy to, and really helping you uncover any patterns that maybe you're living through and that you're wanting to move past. So it's like offering a new perspective. It's offering insight. And I do that by receiving information and sensations and story that I then share with the client. And it sometimes becomes a conversation. Sometimes it becomes very coach-like. But I'm tuning into a certain frequency where I'm tuning in and asking the client to set an intention for how do they want to feel by the end of the session? Do they want a new perspective? Do they want to feel more calm? Do they want some clarity? And for me, it's very important to respect the integrity of the space and the person that I'm working with, and that I'm not making decisions for them. I'm not there to tell them what's right or wrong, but I'm just there to shed a bit of light, a little bit of a new perspective that often helps them. And it's subtle, it's gentle, but it's usually pretty beautiful for me and for them. And people bring all kinds of stuff to it, from relationships to career to I'm feeling lost to I'm in this situation with my family, so it's different than coaching, but it's of that nature. Is that?
Yes, that answers it. So can I ask you then to do an intuitive reading if it's possible for me at the moment on the podcast?
Sure. Right now, right? Okay.
Yes. What is it required of me or you?
So I'll just set it up, and usually, because on my podcast I do take callers and I do readings sometimes. Obviously, I see clients worldwide through Skype and video, and also in my office. But when we're listening in this way, I like to share that. So I'm going to be sharing information for you, but usually in the collective, there's also something that needs to be listened to or heard. And so for people listening, see where the message shared might be for them as well. And I would just ask you, Anna, I usually ask people to set an intention, but because we're just doing this right now in the moment, sometimes I say, like, do you have a question? But then also sometimes, and most usually, I just start receiving information, just opening up to what's available and what's wanting to come through. I would just say, is there a certain way you'd want to feel after this short experience together?
I would like to gain clarity on the 2 questions that I have in my mind.
Okay. Now, do you want me to start just sharing what I'm getting already, or do you want to ask me the questions?
I'm not so comfortable sharing the question.
Okay, perfect.
Well, at least one of them, and the other one is kind of big news.
Okay.
And no, I'm not pregnant. But I would like to know if is this too good to be true? Is this right? Shall I say yes? Shall I follow my heart? If it came to me, does it mean this is the right thing? This is the right moment?
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one question. And the second one is more of a relationship question. I am questioning whether I should continue my relationship with this particular person in this particular way, or shall I change it or stop altogether?
Okay. So I just want to thank you for your vulnerability and trust and courage in asking this, and us listening. I know we're doing this now privately, but people listening too, as they're hearing it, just holding the space for you whenever they listen to it, and with love and acceptance and also learning. So the first question you said, is this too good to be true? Is this the right moment? So I'm just going to take a moment and turn the channel, just from answering questions to just being present in the space with you. I'm going to take a few deep breaths, and I just want to invite you to take some deep breaths too, and just maybe close your eyes and allow yourself to receive and to be present to what's available and moving within you. And also, as people are listening, they can also just breathe and tune into what's available to them and present. It's a question that you're speaking right now in this moment, Anna, but I'm sure we all can relate to that. Like when we have these moments of, is it too good to be true? And as I'm speaking, I'm also going to be tuning in to, is it too good to be true? Is this the right moment? And so the question that's coming forward for me to ask you, Anna, is why not? Why is there this analysis of this right now? What is leading you away from just soaking in what it is? There's a piece of you, a big piece right now, that's taking you out of oh my goodness, wow. It's and you're evaluating and analyzing and, critiquing rather than just being in what's actually happening.
Yeah. Why not? Yes, that makes more sense. Yes, because I don't have an answer to that. Mm-hmm.
And can you sit with the why not right now? Not sit with it, answer the question, why not? And I could see you finding a million answers to why not. But I think, implicit within the why not, it's oh yeah,
Yes, yes, definitely. It comes up as, yes, of course you should. Don't even question.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to leave that there just because it's, we're not doing this full reading, but
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm getting for that question. Do you feel complete with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So the next question is about this relationship. Should I continue my relationship with the way it is? Did you say leave end it or change it or
Yes. Mm-hmm.
something around that? And so also people listening, like I'm sure there's many people, I could even think about that from my personal awareness, like, yeah, I could relate to that. And so I'm going to tune into your experience or just the question that you're asking, like, how is this relationship? So there's something feeling like not, it's feeling stale. And it's like, feels like there's an opportunity for you to need to express yourself. And I feel like from expressing and communicating yourself, something's going to move, but you're like, it feels very uncomfortable as I'm talking about it. Like, I don't want to tolerate this anymore. And I need to speak my truth and have it be heard and do it in a respectful way for me, which will in turn be respectful for the other person. But something needs to move and shift here. And so let me start by sharing how I feel about it.
Yeah, that word tolerate is big for me. It resonates big time.
Okay. Anything else about that?
I think I'm getting more confirmation that I should not tolerate it.
Okay. I feel it in my body, like particularly in my throat. I don't know if you like it's manifesting that way. It's almost like feeling antsy and like like
yes, that is exactly yes, that's exactly how I feel. It's not easy. It's uncomfortable. There's no right or wrong way. And it's not going to lead to any, the outcome is not going to be positive. Most definitely.
And it's like an intolerance. Like, I can't be in this. I can't be here. I don't want it.
Yes.
And so you need to speak, you need to speak. And it might need to even first be to speak to somebody else about it, not that person or whatever the situation is, but you need to voice it and have it be heard, because it's also part of your own development of speaking your truth and like you're taking care of your needs,
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes. Thank you for that.
So thank you for receiving and being open and not only helping yourself, but all of us who are listening and can relate to this, because it's part of our human experience and we can all relate to what you've just asked too. So thank you, Anna, and for trusting me.
Yes, thank you. So before we say goodbye, any recommendation or a tip you can suggest for the listener to open up, to receive, to fine-tune their intuition, or maybe to the skeptic who is listening and saying, I don't know if the skeptic would listen up to this point in the podcast, but to the person who is listening and has more questions after this conversation, what would you say?
I would say put on some music and dance. Like we can, I think I've been so steeped in like intuition, I don't even question its validity. It's because like our body has wisdom. For me, it's like our body speaks to us, and can we listen to that? So I would just, what's easy for you, what's fun for you that gets you out of your head? Like, is it a walk? Is it like what brings you into neutral space? It's like you shared, Anna, you go out. And I can because this happens to me too. I go out for a run and then all of a sudden I get these ideas and inspiration. So what's fun for you and easy that gets you out of your head and out of the landscape of your thinking mind, and just see where that takes you with no expectations, but to know that that's one doorway to hearing and listening to your own wisdom.
Thank you so much, Julie. I am going to dance myself here. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for the pleasure of this hour. I really appreciate it. And thank you.
And that's it for this episode of the Authentic Parenting Podcast. What do you think? What is your number one key takeaway from this episode? Do you trust your intuition? Do you use your intuition the way I do? I have so many interesting stories. Let's continue the conversation in our private Facebook group. If you're in it, then great. If you're not, you have an invitation. It's a positive space, supportive space for moms and dads just like you. Go to authenticparenting.com and click the yellow button to join the Authentic Parenting community on Facebook. Do you follow me on Instagram? My username is authentic.parenting.podcast. I post almost daily, and Instagram is the only social media platform that I use somewhat consistently. For show notes, contact info, and everything else, visit authenticparenting.com. And as always, connect to the present moment, to yourself and your children. Until next week, I am Anna Seewald. Thank you so much for listening.